Nintendo has laid the groundwork for so many people's childhoods. There's games that just reach into our hearts and take us back to when we were young during summer break sitting in front of the screen and playing a game. Whether it's going through the fields of Hyrule, getting our first starter Pokemon for the very first time, or jumping around the Mushroom Kingdom. Nintendo has always had something there for everyone. But if you close your eyes and try to picture what your favorite franchise is going to look like 100 years from now, can you even picture it still being there? When it comes to Nintendo and innovation, they really hit their stride around the GameCube era, innovating the formula of their games and adding new spin-offs such as Luigi's Mansion or Paper Mario. But since then, games have started to look a bit safer, with less experimental options and more of repeating what's worked before. And while this has worked great up until now, games themselves have only been around for about 45 years if you include arcade games. And so thinking about these old franchises continuing on into the 21st century and beyond, it's gonna take some serious work in order to get these franchises to stay around. We've started to see serious innovation with things like Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild or Pokemon Arceus, but is it enough? To me so far, it seems like Nintendo's innovation strategy when it comes to games are to do more of what's worked before. More Pokemon in the games, more fighters in Smash Bros, more villagers in Animal Crossing, just more. But the issue here is that when franchises start to become saturated, you start to lose all meaning behind those numbers. It was a huge deal when Mew was discovered, but it wouldn't have nearly the same impact as adding one more Pokemon today. Or in Super Smash Bros, it was really awesome to see all the new characters that they brought into Brawl, but that number of new fighters has been totally eclipsed by what we have in Super Smash Bros Ultimate. And while these are all very cool things, they're just not something that's sustainable and not something that can continue into the future with new games. What Nintendo needs to do is innovate in a smarter way. They need to not only ask, how can we do more here, but they also need to work on making what they already have richer and more fulfilling. They need to boil the games down to what makes them work and capitalize on that. So what might some of these innovations look like? I'm going to go through and give my thoughts on some of Nintendo's most popular series, as well as give my thoughts on what series could potentially be brought back, trying to give serious thought to what games might look like decades from now. Starting with The Legend of Zelda. To me, at its root, The Legend of Zelda has been about two things: exploration and hope. We'll start with exploration before I explain my reasoning behind hope. Legend of Zelda has been about exploring from its very inception, trying to capture the feel that the creator had of exploring as a young child, and there should be a huge focus on this. Breath of the Wild was a huge step in the right direction, and I think that it's indicative of what the future of the series might look like. Having these mainline games focused on a new land you haven't seen before with all sorts of hidden clues and corners of the world that feel alive and unique is the pinnacle of what Zelda should be. And it doesn't have to be a huge map every time. People got a similar feeling in Hyrule Field on the Nintendo 64 despite it being relatively small. Size doesn't matter nearly as much as what you do with it. And that's a philosophy that Zelda needs to have. I would love to see them expand on their world building and the creatures within it and just make it feel like a living, breathing world. Can you study monsters and learn what makes them tame or befriend them? Maybe you could find and start your own town like Terrytown, but much more in depth. Maybe have your own garden. I don't know. I would love to see Zelda look for that feeling of just taking a world and making it your own. I think that Minecraft is a great example of this and something that Zelda should really look to in the future. But the other thing that could really set Zelda apart is its story. Like I mentioned earlier, at its root, I think Zelda is about a people looking for hope. Whether that's people trying to hold on to the idea of a hero that will never come, or knowing that their town is about to be destroyed and looking for someone to come save them. The most emotionally successful Zelda games are the ones that dive into this. I would really love to see them put some serious thought into their stories, maybe hire a professional writer and really make these shine. But I would also love to see spin-off stories and spin-off games, such as exploring the rise of Ganondorf or Zelda's experience when she was training as Sheik. There are so many rich characters and worlds and stories within The Legend of Zelda that I would love to all see explored. But let's move on to the next franchise, Mario. When it comes to Mario, it's kind of a tough one for me, because as far as I see it, the story and worlds and settings aren't there for themselves, but rather as a canvas for Mario's movement to be highlighted. And that's the fun of Mario, the challenge of moving him around and figuring out what you can and can't do. And to be totally honest, I'm not sure how they can carry this on into the future for decades and still keep things fresh. Super Mario Odyssey, Sunshine, and Galaxy all use the setting as a way to give more depth to the movement of their games, so I could see new settings popping up, but I think that the real future of the series could focus on all the other characters and spin-offs that they started, and really pouring time into those, such as the Mario Kart or Party or Sports series, all of which have seen a lot of love recently, but especially with spin-offs that haven't seen a lot of love in recent times. Things like Super Mario RPG, Luigi's Mansion, or maybe just making spin-off games like Luigi's Mansion for a bunch of other characters, like they've done with Wario in the Treasure Hunting and WarioWare series. I know that there's a lot of people out there, especially in my fan base, who would love to see one of these done for Waluigi, and I think that there are endless opportunities here, and Mario could potentially even stumble across a new face of the series that has games that are even more fun than Mario's. But let's talk about another best-selling series, Pokemon. This game really needs some work. It's holding on to an RPG format that's falling more and more out of style as the years go on, but there is so much potential here. My friend Birdkeeper Toby recently made a video explaining how perfect the idea of a Sonic Adventure 2 type Chow Garden coming to Pokemon would be. I highly recommend checking it out because I think it's the exact mentality that would be needed to make Pokemon work going into the future. Pokemon is all about this feeling of immersion and finding all sorts of fun creatures and then sharing those with your friend. But in my opinion, Pokemon has never really dove headfirst into what it might look like to have a game that lets you take care of these creatures and really make them feel like your own. It's looking like Pokemon Legends Arceus is a step in the exact right direction that Pokemon needs to take and most series should look at going forward, but like with the other two series, I would also love to see a huge emphasis on spin-offs going into the future. There's so many games that they just dropped, like Pokemon Rangers, Pokemon Coliseum, or Pokemon Mystery Dungeon. I've always had more funs with the spin-off games than I have with Pokemon itself, but regardless of what they do, I think they really just need to put an emphasis on that immersion and making you feel like you're part of that world that you can share with your friends. And speaking of feeling like you're part of a world, let's look at Animal Crossing. Animal Crossing is on its way to become one of Nintendo's best-selling games of all time. Heck, even my mom, who hates video games, has probably spent 200 hours in Animal Crossing in just the last month. This franchise really has something special. It's a franchise that is simultaneously difficult to explain why it's even fun, and at the same time captivating and immersing for everyone who plays. It really feels like you have your own little island and your own little world, and in my opinion, they're just getting better and better at that each game. If I had one criticism, I'd like to see the villagers have more personality going forward, but I'm not exactly sure what they can do with this series. Maybe they'll make a city builder kind of like SimCity, but I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. If Animal Crossing was going to continue on for another 100 years, what kind of innovations might you see? The last game I'm going to talk about before I talk about some old classics to bring back is Super Smash Bros. Now, any of you who have been on my channel for more than 5 minutes probably know how much I love this game. I grew up playing Super Smash Bros. And it was my introduction to a bunch of different series of Nintendo's. But there are a few really big missed opportunities here. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is having the mentality of jamming as many characters as possible into the game, which is incredible to see. But what I personally would rather see is a smaller cast of characters that's balanced in a sharper way to make the game more competitive and fun, but also balanced in a way that lets you have enough room for each character to have their own story. I would love to see a story mode come into Super Smash Bros. Like you can see in other games such as Mortal Kombat. And Mortal Kombat is a great example of what to do with a fighting game's non-multiplayer modes. Sure, they do have a story mode, but they've also done things like hide a full RPG in there, put in a kart racer, all sorts of minigames that add an entirely new experience to the game that they've never done before. And there is a lot of room for Smash Bros. To go with this. And given that this is probably Super Smash Bros. Directors Masahiro Sakurai's last game, I could really see the next game being where they innovate. And I personally am super excited to see it. Real fast, I want to go over some games that I really hope that Nintendo does bring back. F-Zero was a fast-paced racer game that had an entirely different feel than Mario Kart, and there's nothing totally like it out there right now. I think that they were really onto something, and it could kind of be a more niche Nintendo game that would have a dedicated audience. Speaking of niche Nintendo games, Custom Robo is a totally missed opportunity for Nintendo. The two games that they have created were both so unique, and they featured you creating little robots that you could battle in arenas. The idea of it, the implementation of it, everything was just so unique and fun and immersive, and I'm super sad to not see it here anymore. Pikmin is a game that isn't totally dead, but we just don't see much coming to it anymore. We see remakes every now and then, and there's rumors of a new game, but I would really love to see them bring it back with a totally new formula. Maybe make it feel like a survival game, like Don't Starve Together, rather than making it a resource gathering game. And the last game I'm going to talk about is Kid Icarus. This game's 3DS iteration really sold me on the series. They have such a fun world here with all of the different gods and goddesses. There is so much that they can do here, and I would love to see them expand those worlds. But anyway, those are my thoughts on some of the current series that we have for Nintendo, as well as some old ones that I'd love to see come back. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. It was a lot more of a rant than I'm used to. I'm preparing to go into a surgery pretty soon, so I needed to be able to just get something off the top of my head and get it out to you guys. So I really hope that you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Like this video, hit subscribe, and until next time, keep thinking.